Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today's card has a lot of stamping in it. I recently purchased these Ranger die ink pads. I really liked the way the black one performed in my black ink test, so I thought I'd buy some colors and try them out. I'm going to be using the Favorite Flower set by Simon Says Stamp, this kind of unusual circle here, and then the Happy and Smile set. That's where I got the sentiment from. The first thing I'm going to do is prep my cardstock for this garland. It's a piece of Nina Solar White cardstock. It's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have some black embroidery thread, and then I'm just cutting 3 pieces, one for each of these strands. And I'm not going to place this down yet. I'm just going to kind of lay out my card so I can see where everything is going to be located. And so once I figure out where the garland is going to be, I'll take a pencil and I'm going to mark the left side and the right side. And notice I put the ball right there underneath the string so I can make sure I had enough distance between that and the sentiment. Next, I'm going to connect those 2 marks with my pencil, and I'm just eyeballing this, and I'm sort of looking at the one that I'm drawing to. You can see I'm kind of going back and forth with my pencil a little bit, and it might take you a couple of tries, but it's pretty easy to connect the 2 dots. Now it's time for the stamping. I'm going to stamp these dots just below the line, and I'm going to rotate it just a little bit each time so it looks like it's a different dot, so it doesn't look like it's the same stamp. I really like the stamping quality of these inks, and I especially like the colors, which is why I chose these 3. This pink is a really bright bubblegum color. It's like nothing that Stampin' Up! Carries, and even the bubblegum that Simon Says Stamp has is just not quite as bright of a pink as this. It's really pretty. Anyway, I'm going to finish until my dots go all the way off the edge of the paper. Next, I'm actually going to adhere the string that I cut earlier. And I don't need to erase my pencil lines because I'm putting the string directly on top. I'm using a 2-way glue pen because it works like a pen really, and so you get really nice precise application of glue. And I'm just going to kind of tap my string across, and it sticks very fast and very well. So for the long one, I did kind of little pieces here, and you don't have to worry about it drying too fast. It does stay wet enough for you to get the thread down. So I'm going to do all 3 of these, and they're all hanging off the edge. And once I get that 3rd one down, I'm going to kind of press down on all the edges to make sure that they go all the way to the edge and they're adhered very securely at the edge. And then I let it dry for probably 10 minutes or so just to make sure that everything was completely solidly on the cardstock. And now I'm going to take a tape runner and just going to put some tape on the back so that I can wrap this string around. You could cut the string off, but my fear is always that it's going to unravel a little bit and kind of fray, and it won't look as clean. Once I have them wrapped around, I'm just going to cut off the excess so I don't have any extra bulk on the back of my card. I'm going to stamp my sentiment in some VersaFine black onyx ink. It always seems to be my go-to ink for sentiments. And there's lots of different things you can combine with this word happy in the stamp set, but I decided to use the You Make Me. So it's just a different stamp that I lined up, and this time I used my grid sheet to make sure I got it straight across, and I stamped that with the VersaFine as well. To connect these dots with the line, I used my Copic multi-liner marker. It's a 0.3, and you can use pretty much any marker, but this has a really fine tip, so I just drew a little line between the dot and the garland. When I first did this card, I stopped here and I just left the garland as is, but then I came back the next day and decided I wanted to add a little bit more dimension. So you could go on with this next step, or you can just stop here. What I did was I took a matching distress ink. This is Picked Raspberry. I put some on my craft mat, and then I picked some up with an aqua painter. And I'm being really careful here because this is not watercolor paper, so it's going to dry quickly and become permanent. So I'm starting with a light hand at first, and all I'm doing is picking up a little bit of color, and I'm coloring the left side of each one of these dots and pulling the color out till it hits about the middle or so, maybe a little bit beyond on some of them. So you can see it's really starting to look like it has shape. You can see I'm kind of using my craft mat as a palette to move some of the ink over, mix it with water a little bit, because the last thing I want to do is hit the cardstock with a really dark pink and then it dries quickly and I'm stuck there. So anyway, so I'm doing it a little bit at a time, and after my first pass, distress ink will kind of fade a little bit when you've got water in it. So I decided to go back in one more time, and I went through each one of these and added just a little bit more color to the left-hand side of each one. And as what usually happens when I use VersaFine ink, which takes a long time to dry, I smudge it. So the entire time I was coloring these pink dots, my hand was going up and down on the sentiment and creating all sorts of smudge marks around it. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to take my sanding block and sand all around the sentiment, and it actually does a really good job of just removing just a fine mist layer of the cardstock, and you can no longer see any of the smudges. All right, moving on to the green, I'm using some Evergreen Bow, and I'm going to speed through a little bit of this. There's quite a few dots here, and I've got a tissue off to the side that I can wipe my aqua painter on if I get too much ink on it, but I'm just being really careful. And as with the pink ones, I did 2 rounds on the green. Finally, Dusty Concord is the one that I chose to go with the purple ones, and I did the same thing with those. I wanted to add a white reflection mark on the other side of the dot, so I used my picket fence marker, and the first time I used this marker it worked great, but for some reason on this one it didn't work at all. I don't know if it somehow dried up between the last card and this card, but you can see the white mark on the first dot, but then you can't see it on any of the others. So I carried on here for a bit, and then I turned the camera off and looked at some of the other options. And I found the best option was this Faber-Castell pastel pencil. You could also use just a plain old white colored pencil. I tried gelato. I tried gelato with water, I should say. I also tried the Faber-Castell Big Brush white pen mixed with water, and those were too faded. This gave me a perfect amount of white, and it was kind of dull a little bit, and when I rubbed my finger on it, it became even more dull, which was exactly the look that I wanted. Finally, I'm going to put some ATG tape runner on this and adhere it to a Hero Arts note card that's white on the inside, and I have actually trimmed it down to a 1/16 of an inch mat on all sides. Anyway, so that is the card for today. Pretty simple. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.